I'm Jeremy. Today is day 114 of reading. Today we're reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Let's get started. By the way, because TikTok was banned yesterday for some reason, so I couldn't post, so yeah. Okay, let's get started. We are on page 299. They marched Lockhart out of his office down the nearest stairs, along a dark corridor with the messages shown on the wall, to the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They sent Lockhart in first. Harry was pleased to see that he was shaking. Moaning Myrtle was sitting on the tank of the end toilet. "Oh, it's you," she said when she saw Harry. "What do you want this time? To ask you how you died?" said Harry. Myrtle's whole aspect changed at once. She looked as though she had never been asked such a flattering question. "Ooh, it was dreadful," she said with relish. "It happened right in here. I died in this very stall. I remember it so well. I hid in because Olive Hornby was teasing me about my glasses. The door was locked, and I was crying. And then I heard somebody come in. They said something funny, a different language. I think it must have been. Anyway, what really got to me was that it was a boy speaking. So I unlocked the door to tell him to go and use his own toilet, and then..." Myrtle swelled importantly, her face shining. "I died." "How?" said Harry. "No idea," said Myrtle in hushed tones. "I just remember seeing a pair of great big yellow eyes. My whole body sort of seized up, and then I was floating away." She looked dreamily at Harry. "And then I came back again. I was determined to haunt Olive Hornby, you see. Oh, she was sorry she ever laughed at my glasses." "Where exactly did you see the eyes?" said Harry. "Somewhere there," said Myrtle, pointing vaguely toward the sink in front of her toilet. Harry and Ron hurried over to it. Lockhart was standing well back, a look of utter terror on his face. It looked like an ordinary sink. They examined every inch of it, inside and out, including the pipes below. And then Harry saw it. Scratched on the side of one of the copper taps was a tiny snake. "That tap's never worked," said Myrtle brightly as he tried to turn it. "Harry," said Ron, "say something in Parseltongue." But Harry thought hard. The only times he'd ever managed to speak Parseltongue were when he had been faced with a real snake. He stared hard at the tiny engraving, trying to imagine it was real. "Open up," he said. He looked at Ron, who shook his head. "English," he said. Harry looked back at the snake, willing himself to believe it was alive. If he moved his head, the candlelight made it look as though it was moving. "Open up," he said, except that the words weren't what he heard. A strange hissing had escaped him, and at once the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. Next second, the sink began to move. The sink, in fact, sank right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, a pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. Harry heard Ron gasp and looked up again. He had made up his mind what he was going to do. "I'm not going down there," he said. He couldn't not go. "I'm going down there," he said. He couldn't not go. Not now that they had found the entrance to the chamber. Not if there was the faintest, slimmest, wildest chance that Ginny might be alive. "Me too," said Ron. There was a pause. "Well, you hardly seem to need me," said Lockhart with a shadow of his old smile. "I'll just..." He put his hand on the doorknob. But Harry and Ron both pointed their wands at him. "You can go first," Ron snarled. White-faced and wandless, Lockhart approached the opening. "Boys," he said, his voice feeble. "Boys, what good will it do?" Harry jabbed him in the back with his wand. Lockhart slid his legs into the pipe. "I really don't think," he started to say, but Ron gave him a push, and he slid out of sight. Harry followed quickly. He lowered himself slowly into the pipe, then let go. It was like rushing down an endless, slimy, dark slide. He could see more pipes branching off in all directions, but none as large as theirs, which twisted and turned, sloping steeply downward, and he knew that he was falling deeper below the school than even the dungeons. Behind him he could hear Ron, thudding slightly at the curves. And then, just as he had begun to worry about what would happen when he hit the ground, the pipe leveled out, and he shot out of the end with a wet thud, landing on the damp floor of a dark stone tunnel large enough to stand in. Lockhart was getting to his feet a little ways away, covered in slime and white as a ghost. Harry stood aside as Ron came whizzing out of the pipe. "Two, we must be miles under the school," said Harry, his voice echoing in the black tunnel. "Under the lake, probably," said Ron, squinting around at the dark, slimy walls. All three of them turned into the darkness ahead. "Lumos!" Harry muttered to his wand, and it lit again. "Come on," he said to Ron and Lockhart, and off they went, their footsteps slapping loudly on the wet floor. The tunnel was so dark that they could only see a little distance ahead. Their shadows on the wet walls looked monstrous in the wan light. "Remember," Harry said quietly as they walked cautiously forward. "Any sign of movement? Close your eyes right away." But the tunnel was quiet as the grave, and the first unexpected sound they heard was a loud crunch as Ron stepped on what turned out to be a rat's skull. Harry lowered his wand to look at the floor and saw that it was littered with small animal bones. Trying very hard not to imagine what Ginny might look like if they found her, Harry led the way forward, around a dark bend in the tunnel. "Harry, there's something up there," said Ron hoarsely, grabbing Harry's shoulder. They froze, watching. Harry could just see the outline of something huge and curved, lying right across the tunnel. It wasn't moving. "Maybe it's asleep," he breathed, glancing back at the other two. Lockhart's hands were pressed over his eyes. Harry turned back to look at the thing, his heart beating so fast it hurt. Very slowly, his eyes as narrow as he could make them and still see, Harry edged forward, his wand held high. The light slid over a gigantic snake's skin of a vivid, poisonous green, lying up, curled and empty across the tunnel floor. The creature that had shed it must have been 20 feet long at least. "Blimey!" said Ron weakly. There was a sudden movement behind them. Good old Lockhart's knees had given away. "Get up!" said Ron sharply, pointing his wand at Lockhart. Lockhart got to his feet. Then he dived at Ron, knocking him to the ground. Harry jumped forward, but it was too late. Lockhart was straightening up, panting, Ron's wand in his hand, and a gleaming smile back on his face. "The adventure ends here, boys," he said. "I shall take a bit of this skin back up to the school. Tell them I was too late to save the girl, and that you two tragically lost your minds at the sight of her mangled body. Say goodbye to your memories." He raised Ron's spello-taped wand high over his head and yelled, "Obliviate!" The wand exploded with the force of a small bomb. Harry flung his arms over his head and ran, slipping over the coils of snake skin, out of the way of the great chunks of tunnel ceiling that were thundering to the floor. Next moment, he was standing alone, gazing at a solid wall of broken rock. "Ron!" he shouted. "Are you okay? Ron!" "I'm here!" came Ron's muffled voice from behind the rock. "I'm okay. This gets not, though. He got blasted by the wand." Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow.